Remember when you could pop the hood of your truck, figure out what was wrong in about 10 minutes, and fix it yourself in the driveway on a Saturday afternoon? No laptop, no dealership diagnostic tool that costs more than your first car, no error codes that nobody can explain. Just you, a wrench, and an engine that made sense. Somewhere along the way that changed. Modern trucks got bigger, shinier, and loaded with more computers than a space shuttle. And somehow, despite all of that technology, despite all of those sensors and modules and software updates, they still find ways to leave you stranded on the side of the road with a bill that makes your eyes water. The old engines did not have any of that. They did not need it. They were built by people who understood that a truck is a tool, and a tool needs to work every single day without asking anything from you except oil and fuel. Today on Cars with Memories, we are talking about the 5 truck engines that simply refuse to die. Coming in at number 5, the Detroit Diesel 6.2-liter that was used in the 1980s GMC Sierra Classic. General Motors introduced the 6.2-liter diesel in 1982 as a fuel-efficient alternative to the big gas-hungry V8 engines that were powering their trucks at the time. Nobody expected it to become a legend, and honestly, by modern diesel standards, it never tried to be one. It was not fast, it was not powerful, but that was never the point. What the 6.2 was honest. It was designed from the ground up as a true diesel, not a converted gas engine wearing different clothes. Detroit Diesel built it specifically to drop directly into the GMC and Chevrolet pickup lineup with minimal changes, which meant every component was exactly where it needed to be, and nothing was there by compromise. That kind of purpose-built simplicity is almost impossible to find in anything rolling off an assembly line today. Coming in at number 4, the Chevrolet 350 small block used in the 1980s Chevy trucks. Ask any mechanic who has been turning wrenches for more than 20 years which engine they would trust to still be running when everything else around it has given up, and a significant number of them will say the same thing. The 350. The pushrod overhead valve architecture kept the whole package straightforward, with fewer moving parts than almost anything else in its class, and low compression ratios that meant the engine never felt like it was being pushed beyond its limits even under a full load. That was the quiet genius of it, an engine that worked hard without ever seeming to break a sweat. Parts availability was another story entirely. You could swap components between a 1955 small block and a 1990 engine, decades apart, and have them fit. No other manufacturer built an engine family with that kind of cross-generational compatibility, which meant that keeping one alive on the side of a highway, on a ranch, or in a small town with one auto parts store was never the challenge it would be with anything built today. Coming in at number 3. The Ford 300 Inline 6, found under the hood of the 1985 to 1991 Ford F-250. Most engines earn their reputation by being powerful. The Ford 300 earned its by being indestructible. It was never intended to be a specialty engine. Ford built it to fill the gap between 4-cylinder engines that could not handle serious work and V8 engines that thirstier buyers wanted to avoid. What nobody anticipated was just how far that straightforward brief would take it. The foundation of its durability was a 7-main bearing design which distributed load across the crankshaft far more evenly than most engines of its era. And instead of a timing chain or belt, Ford used a gear-driven camshaft, eliminating one of the most common failure points found in almost every other overhead valve engine ever built. No belt to snap at 200,000 miles. No chain to stretch and rattle, just gears doing their job quietly decade after decade. When it left the truck world, it went straight into airport baggage tugs, wood chippers, irrigation pumps, and ski lifts. Environments where engines are measured not in miles, but in thousands of hours of constant load. That alone tells you everything about how Ford engineers viewed its capabilities. Bolted into an F-250, it never made headlines for horsepower. What it made was torque, traction, and a track record that mechanics still talk about today. Coming in at number 2, the 7.3-liter Power Stroke diesel, at home in the 1999 to 2003 Ford F-350 Super Duty. There is a specific reason why 1999 to 2003 Ford Super Duty trucks still command serious money on the used market today, decades after they left the factory floor. That reason has 8 cylinders and 7.3 liters of displacement. Navistar International built this engine just before emissions regulations arrived and permanently complicated diesel design. What that timing meant in practice was a cast iron block, forged steel connecting rods, and a fuel system architecture that prioritized longevity over everything else. No particulate filters, no exhaust fluid tanks, no software deciding whether your truck was allowed to do its job today. Just combustion, torque, and mechanical integrity. The hydraulic electronic unit injection was the first of its kind and proved its worth over hundreds of thousands of miles of real-world use. 500,000 miles on a single engine was not a fantasy with this power plant. Fleet operators documented it, mechanics verified it, and owners lived it. When something did eventually go wrong, the fix was almost always straightforward. Fleet operators famously kept a spare camshaft position sensor in the glove box and could swap it out roadside in 10 minutes. That tells you everything about the philosophy behind this engine, built for the people who actually depend on their truck to earn a living, not just drive to the office. With 235 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, it never chased headlines. It just worked, day after day, year after year, long after everything built to replace it had already been to the shop twice. And for our last and best option on this list, the Cummins 5.9-liter 12-valve, well known for being used for the 1994 to 1998 Dodge Ram 2500. A simple design, unmatched dependability, tremendous performance potential, and the kind of durability that gets measured in 500,000 miles, rather than oil change intervals. That is the short version of what makes the 12-valve Cummins the engine that sits at the very top of this list. The secret weapon was the Bosch P7-100 injection pump, introduced in 1994 to meet new emissions standards. Nobody anticipated that this mechanical fuel pump, with zero electronics governing it, would become one of the most celebrated components in diesel history. No computer telling it what to do, no sensor network monitoring its every decision. Just a precision mechanical pump delivering fuel with the kind of consistency that electronically controlled systems have spent 30 years trying to replicate. This engine began its life powering agricultural equipment before finding its way into trucks, and that heritage showed. It was overbuilt by design, carrying over 1,000 pounds of cast iron construction that laughed at the kind of heat and load cycles that would send a modern turbocharged 4-cylinder to an early grave. Owners regularly reported 20 to 26 miles per gallon, figures that made buyers of brand new trucks genuinely uncomfortable. And when something eventually needed attention, a novice with basic tools could pull the turbocharger in minutes and replace the water pump in under an hour. 30 years on, clean examples still sell fast and command prices that defy logic. That is not nostalgia, that is a track record.